Hello JY family, it's so good to be back with you guys. It's been way too long. Your JY leaders miss you, I miss you, and we are so excited to be back online with you. I hope that you have all stayed safe and healthy and that you've had a good break, and I hope that term 3 has been a good start so far. With term 3 starting up, we are going to be meeting again. JY is back every Friday at 5:30. We will be staying online, but that's all right. We're still going to have lots of fun. And if anything changes and we consider moving back in person, we'll let you know. So stay tuned for that. But I wonder if any of you have ever tried to tell someone, maybe a friend or a family member or someone from school, about Jesus. But you got kind of nervous and you weren't sure what to say, and so you decided in the end, not for me, and you decided not to do it. I've had those moments, and I'm pretty sure every single one of us has at least once had that experience. Where do we even start? Do we start at creation? Do we start with Jesus' birth? Do we start at the cross? Do we start with Jesus' miracles? Do we mention sin? Should we mention sin to someone who's not a Christian? Won't that scare them away? Well, these are all great questions, and we should answer these. We should think about these as we think about telling others about Jesus. So for the next couple of weeks, we're going to be starting a new series called How to Tell a Friend. In this series, we're going to be looking at the basic, simple gospel message about Jesus, and we're going to be teaching ourselves and you guys how to tell others about Jesus. We're going to simplify it and make it super easy to share and to remember. So maybe you don't know about all this Christian stuff and you're still trying to figure it out for yourself. Or maybe you have a friend who also wants to know about it, but you aren't really sure how to tell them. Well, whichever one you are, why don't you tune in and join us every Friday? It's going to be a great time of learning the gospel and learning how to tell it to others. We want to know Jesus and we want to make him known. So don't miss it, stick around for it, and try not to miss a single week, because we're going to be going in a series. We're going to have different pictures every week that summarize the message, and you don't want to miss any of those. So tune in every Friday. So you're probably thinking, Amy, why do you have a crown on your head? You might not even have heard anything I just said because you were wondering about this crown. Well, I wonder if you've ever thought about what it would be like to be a king or the president of the world, maybe the principal of your school, or just someone in charge of everything. What would you do if you were the king of the world for a day? Would you remove some rules? Would you add some new ones? Maybe you'd buy lots of things. I think I'd want to buy an island. It'd be pretty cool. Well, God's book, the Bible, talks about who is in charge, about who is the king of everything. And it asks a very simple question. It says, who will be your king? And that's something that we're going to answer. We want you to answer, not now, but at the end of our series. After we've talked through the whole gospel message, I'd love for you to figure out in your own mind who will be your king. So here's another challenge for you. It's a pretty simple one, but I'd like for you to, every time you see this crown appear on the screen, say out loud. You can whisper it, you can shout it, you can jump up and down and sing it if you want. I'd like for you to say, God is king. Every time you see this crown, God is king. Okay, as I said, you can even whisper it if you're shy, but I'd love for you to say that out loud every time you see that crown. It's pretty simple, so check it out, watch out for it. It'll appear several times while I'm talking. So today we're starting right from the beginning. Our Bible story starts with God. The Bible begins with God as the loving king of everything because he created it all. Genesis 1 tells us that God made the whole world and continues to say he made everything in it. So Genesis 1 verse 1 says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. So because God made everything, he is in charge of it all. It's his creation. He is the king. The wonderful thing about God is he isn't like some of our human kings. We've had some bad ones, some bad rulers. God is not bossy or selfish. He's not a corrupt king. Instead, he is kind and loving. He's perfect. That is why his world is made up and full of so many good things. But God also made us. Genesis 1:26 tells us, "Then God said, 'Let us make human beings in our image and likeness, and let them rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky. Let them rule over the tame animals, over all the earth, and over all the small crawling animals on the earth.'" So God created people, you and me, who were something like himself, and put them in charge of the world, to rule it, to care for it, to take responsibility for it, and to enjoy everything that he had created. He made people to look after the world, but they still had to live under his rule. They still had to obey him as their king. This means living with God as their king and listening to what he says. Revelation 4 verse 11 says, "Our God, our Lord and God, you are worthy to receive glory, honor, and power because you created all things, and by your decision they came to be." So because God created everything in this world, both that on the earth, creation, so plants, animals, and he created us, people, he is in charge of all of that. He's in charge of everything he created, and he deserves to be worshipped as the king. So our picture for this week is this one. It's going to pop up on the screen. And in the picture, we see that God is the king. That's what the crown represents. And then we see human beings, you and me, are created to live in God's world and to take care of it. So we are standing underneath God's rule, under the crown, and on the earth, looking after the earth, but while still being under God's rule. Now this sounds like a perfect picture, doesn't it? God in heaven looking after his creation, people in the world listening to God, taking care of the world, protecting it, and God is in relationship with these people. There's a relationship there. God is king, people under his rule. Everything is working perfectly in the world as it should. But something must have gone wrong. We know this. If we look around the world today, the perfect picture we see in the beginning is not what's going on in our world today. We just have to think back to last week and all the riots that were happening, and people were getting hurt and people were stealing things. It's a clear picture that something is not quite right with our world or with us as human beings. The trouble is, the big problem is, we as human beings don't always like to do what God tells us to do. But I'm not going to give away any more. You'll have to tune in next week to find out what happened in our story that made everything go so badly. So don't miss it. Tune in next week Friday, and we'll see you soon on Zoom.